Luke 19:1 through 10. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be a guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost."
For the month of November, we're going to talk about what it means to show up in people's lives. And when I said this a couple weeks ago, I actually had someone come and ask me, why in the world would you have that much time devoted on what it means to show up? Why is showing up so important to you? And I think it comes down to the fact that there's 2 needs that we all have that I see colliding together when you come to showing up. The first one is the fact that we're all made for a connection to others. None of us is an island. We can't go through life alone, and there is a widespread, seldom talked about level of loneliness that is going on, not just around the world, but especially here where we live. The government's own statistics say that about 61% of people, more than half of everyone living right now, experiences loneliness every year. And at any one time, almost 40% of the population is experiencing it personally. Most people only have 1 to 2 close friends, and over 20% of people have no close friends, no one they can count on. And this is bad. Loneliness isn't just bad mentally, it literally creates physical pain in people. It literally is worse for your health than obesity, and it costs, just among our elderly population, $6.7 billion a year because of loneliness in medical costs. It increases your chance of dying. It disconnects you from life. And those who use social media the most, especially those that are using it to disconnect from social interactions, are lonelier than other people. And in fact, the way that things work right now, the younger you are, the lonelier you are. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. And we're not made to live this way. And so there's this huge need for connection. The other thing that is a need is that we all need purpose. We all have to have a reason to get up and do something with our day beyond just surviving, beyond just paying bills. And purpose is realized when we use our influence positively in others' lives. Now, here's the thing I need you to realize right up front, is that whether you believe it or not, you have influence. You have a say in what other people think, what other people do, how they perceive the world. And I don't care how big you think your platform is. I don't care who you think is watching you. Somebody is watching you. If you are a parent, this is doubly true. If you have ever said that you are a Christian, this is doubly true. Someone is watching you to see how you live and what that looks like. So using your influence positively is part of how your purpose gets realized. But what do you want to use it for? Well, Jesus said that for those of us who are his followers, that we're going to use this influence we have so that as we go, we make disciples. We teach them who Jesus is and what he's taught and how he's called us to live. If that seems a little bit much, then we've declared that that's what we mean by our mission statement here at our church. We exist to help connect people to the real life found in Christ. So as we go, we connect people to real life. And if that's still too scary, if you don't think you can use your influence to that, think about it this way. In order to do those things that Christ has asked us to do, in order to fulfill the mission that we believe we have here, what we're really asking you to do is, as you go, care for people. As you go, love people. As you go, invest in them so that their life is better once they've come in contact with you than it was before you entered in. So could it be that this incredible need we have to connect and this widespread loneliness that is right around us and this need we have for purpose, this need we have to go and do what we're called to do, to have something beyond ourselves to exist for, could it be that these two things could go together, and they could go together so simply if we're just willing to show up? There's a strange story in Luke chapter 19 about Jesus showing up. And in it, we're introduced to this character named Zacchaeus. Now, you might know him from the song if you grew up in church as a kid. I think it came from Ireland. I don't know just the way the wordings go. But we know a couple things about Zacchaeus when he's introduced to us in this story. We know he lives near Jericho, which we'll get back to in a second. And we know that he is the chief tax collector, which means a couple of things. Being a tax collector at this time for the Jewish people meant that you were a traitor. You had betrayed your faith. You had betrayed your people and your culture. You had betrayed your nation. And this guy just wasn't any tax collector. He was the chief of the tax collectors. He was the leader of all the traitors in that area. You can imagine what that meant the rest of the people thought about him. We also learn that he's rich because of this, which to be rich when you were a tax collector at this time meant that you robbed people. Because the way you made your money was overcharging everybody. Rome was asking for 5, so you would take 10 and send 5 away. And you would rob people of what they had made in order to line your own pockets. And he was really, really good at being a thief. And you can imagine what that made everyone else think about him. And then we learn that he's short. And I understand how that feels, but he's probably even shorter than me, and he has trouble seeing over crowds. And I don't know if you've ever been around somebody who is universally despised, who is considered shameful, who is looked at as a traitor and an outcast and all of that stuff. But if he has something visibly different about them, you can guarantee that people are talking about it. You can guarantee that he's got names thrown his way, that he's got little side comments going his way as he goes about his business that makes him even more aware of what he looks like. So here he is, Zacchaeus, the traitor, thief, short guy, who nobody would welcome into their home. Nobody would welcome into their presence. Nobody wants around. He is the ultimate outcast. He's been left out of so much of life in this town because of the choices he's made. He can't go to synagogue and worship with them. He can't really go to the marketplace and have other people around. I'm sure nobody comes to his house just to see him. He's not invited to any of the birthday parties or bar mitzvahs. He is alone. But he hears that Jesus is coming through town. And there's this crowd that's gathered around him, and he's heard about the miracles that he's done. He's heard some of the teachings he's had. He's heard the hope that people have about who Jesus is. And he wants to see him with his own eyes at least once. And so he goes out to join the crowd and to see what's going on, but he can't see through all of the people. There's too many of them. They're too tall. He can't get any clear view of Jesus. And you know no one is going to make room for him in that crowd, right? And so he can't squeeze his way through. No one's going to clear out of the way and make a space for him. It's kind of like if you're at a parade and you're not there on the front, then maybe you miss so much of what goes by. And you hope that there's this one nice person who will kind of slide to the side, especially if you're a kid, and let you go and sit on the curb. Well, no one is doing that for Zacchaeus. And so he runs ahead of the path, and he finds a tree, And he awkwardly climbs up that thing by himself when no one else is around to pretty much just hide out in the tree until Jesus comes by. And as he waits there, eventually the crowd comes. And they start to gather in around the bottom of the tree as they follow Jesus, and he's able to see Jesus. And this isn't the weird part. The weird part is not that this short traitor thief is awkwardly hiding up in a tree. The weird part is that as Jesus walks by, he looks up and he sees him. And not only does he see him, but he calls out to him. He calls him out of this huge crowd of people. Now, I want you to think for a second about what that means on Jesus' end. Because Jesus wasn't just walking to go have a good time. He was walking with purpose. He was headed to Jerusalem. This was days before the cross was about to take place. He was getting ready to enter into Jerusalem triumphantly because the time had come for that most heavy moment in his life. If I was Jesus, I would be focused on that. I would be preparing myself for that. I would know it was going to take everything that I had to be able to make it through these next several days. And instead of getting there and resting and being saved up and ready for that moment, he looks up and he sees this guy that nobody else wants to have anything to do with, and he calls out to him. And he doesn't call him traitor. He doesn't call out his sins. He doesn't yell at him for being a thief. He doesn't even make fun of what he looks like. He calls him by his name. He gives him dignity. He treats him with respect. In the middle of the crowd, in the middle of the awkwardness, in the middle of the weight of what he's facing, he still made space so Zacchaeus could be welcomed into his presence. That's that great commission we talked about in action. As you go, make disciples. As you go, make people welcome, because that will lead them to know about Jesus. And Jesus didn't stop there. He still wanted to increase the welcome, because this, if you forget everything else, remember this. Jesus had a lifestyle of hospitality. Jesus had a lifestyle of welcome that he asks you and I to have as well. And this is what it looks like. Wherever I am, others are welcome. Wherever I show up, wherever I'm at, others are welcome. So whether I'm at my house, or I'm at work, or I'm at my lunch break, or I'm in my car, or I'm going to the store, wherever I am at, others are welcome. And so Jesus, in the midst of the crowd, makes room so that Zacchaeus, the one that nobody else wants to make welcome, can be welcome. And then he goes a step further by inviting himself to Zacchaeus' house. Now, this isn't presumptuous or rude. It's actually a gracious gift, because it was an honor to host people of prominence at this time. And you knew that nobody was coming to Zacchaeus' house. Ever. And here is this man, holy, who's going to go invite himself to dinner at the most chief sinner around. He was giving him what everyone else was denying him. He gave him his time. He gave him his presence. He gave him some worth. On the way to the cross, giving Zacchaeus his presence was worth it. And a strange thing happened while they were at that party. Not only did they feast, not only did they spend time together, not only did they, I'm sure, have some conversation, and other people whispered in the background and outside the city about how wrong this was, but while they were there, the welcome that Jesus gave Zacchaeus led to his whole life being transformed. When they were in the middle of the stuff that was going on, Zacchaeus stood up at one point and he said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay it back 4 times the amount." That's a big change in the life of this man. Can you imagine what that was going to cost him? Can you imagine how different that was than his whole way of operating up to this point? You see, he had changed because Jesus had made space for him. He had made him welcome. He had showed up in his life. And so Jesus responds by calling him a true son of Abraham. So no longer is he identified as the traitor and the thief. Now he is one of the people of God again. He has his identity back. He is restored, and he has a place to belong that he had lost. Showing up brought salvation to Zacchaeus and his household. Showing up brought change to the families in Jericho that had been taken advantage of. Showing up made all of the difference. Wherever I am, others are welcome. Why? Because my purpose, as I go, wherever I go, is to help connect people to real life in Christ. The Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. And lost people aren't a certain type of people. I don't just go and hang out with people who are good. I don't just go and hang out with people who vote like I vote or view the world like I view it. I don't just go and hang out with people who are from my culture or from my nation. When the lost get brought up, the lost is anyone. But I don't have to be scared about that. Because while it's probably good to have, an ability to listen, an ability to be places, things like that, really my skill level is not the issue when it comes to this. I'm not showing up in people's lives. I don't make people welcome just because I have a great set of skills, because I know the answers to everyone's questions, because I've memorized the Bible, because I know psychology so well, because I have a lot of stuff to give. None of that is really important. What's really important is my ability to say, you are welcome with me because Jesus has welcomed me. Because of what Christ has done for me, I now do that for you. I welcome you. I give you worth. I know that you are not perfect. I know that you have things in your life that are awful and gross and nobody else wants to see you about it or be around you because of it. But if you're willing to take my offer up, you're welcome to be around me. I will show up. I show up as I go by being present, by being ready to connect with people, ready to care. And this is no strings attached, right? I don't care for you hoping that you'll do something for me. I don't care for you hoping that you'll show up at a church that I invite you to or anything like that. I show up and I care for you because you are valuable. No strings attached. So when you don't respond how I think you should, that doesn't mean I still don't care for you. I will offer my hand of friendship to anyone who will accept it. Once I knew a guy who'd had the worst day he'd ever had in his life. He thought everything was over. And one night, relationships he'd had, reputations he'd had, plans that he'd had, the future that he thought he'd had, all got burned up. And so he spent some time wandering around and was ready to take his life when God miraculously stopped it from happening. Confused and not sure what was going on, he continued to walk until he ended up crossing paths with me. And I had known him before, and so I was able to connect with him a little bit and talk, and I knew that in the immediate need, he needed some food and he needed a ride home, so that's what we did. What I didn't realize that a ride home was almost an hour drive away. And so as we drove, I listened. As he poured out everything that was wrong, all of the anger that he had, all of the frustration that he had, all of the ways that he thought things weren't worth it anymore. And I was overwhelmed, right? Like I had no idea what I was getting into when I invited him into my car. I just was showing up. And I had no idea what to say as he was going through all of this stuff. So I just kind of kept my mouth shut and I listened. I didn't know what else to do other than just to be there. And at the end of the ride, we exchanged numbers, and he got out and I drove back. And as I drove back, I was quiet still because I still didn't know what to do or what to say. Well, a couple days later, I just sent a message, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I got a reply back. And so we did that a couple times, and then we started showing up together, and then I kept getting to show up because he kept accepting the welcome. And so showing up meant like giving him rides to counseling or helping with developing job skills or sitting down to work on what a resume looked like. Helping and showing up looked like caring for him as he started wanting to date, and looking at what that would mean as he dealt with the demons that were going on in his own life. Showing up meant having breakfast together and talking and praying together and digging in at what it meant to follow Jesus. And little by little, moment by moment, I realized that each time we met, I had no idea what I was doing. Each time we met, I did nothing magical. I did nothing miraculous. I didn't know what to do often, but just be there. I didn't know what to do except every so often tell him about the Jesus that I know and what he's done for me. I had no idea what to do except if I saw something that he needed and I could do something about it, to do it. That's all I could do. It seemed so simple. It seemed so inconsequential. I often felt like nothing was happening. I often felt like I was wasting my time. And then a few years later, after so much had passed, after showing up had passed, I was able to look back. And this man who had lost everything and was ready to take his life had now become married and is a father and has this incredible heart for serving others, and will do anything he can to reach out to people who are in situations that he knows far too much about to see if he can help them get out of it. And it wasn't just me showing up that led to that. It was me showing up and then others showing up around him that did the same thing, people investing in him, people pouring out their life for him. But it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't anything supernatural on our end. It was only the fact that when we showed up, God showed up. And when we showed up, God was able to work and move through his life in ways that nobody would have expected. My friend Carrie Willis issues this challenge. Can you do that? Can you sit and talk? Can you let Jesus in you come through in a way that is comfortable and natural? Can you listen? Can you be there? You'd be amazed at what the Spirit can do through a willing vessel. The truth is we're heading into the holiday season here, and we're in the midst of a pandemic, and both of those things are doing something serious and significant. They are increasing the levels of loneliness that people are feeling, and they are often making it feel like we don't have opportunities to fulfill our purpose. My challenge for us is that we won't let that be the case. And instead, we will bring those two needs together and show up in people's lives. Would you do this? In these next few moments I'm going to give you, would you think of 5 people you know that you could show up for? They may be people in your workplace, they could be people in your neighborhood, they could be people in your own home. But you know that they are struggling right now with something. Or maybe you don't even know they're struggling. You just feel like God is saying you should be there for them. And would you write those names down? Put it someplace you can see daily. Pray for them. And then commit to being there for them over the next 2 months. I'm not calling for you to preach to them. I'm not calling for you to even invite them to church. If you want to, that's great. If you want to invite them into your home, that's awesome. You can bring them coffee. I don't care. None of that's really important. I want you to go into this with no expectations on them. And I want you to go into this thinking you have no special skills to offer. But I want you to commit and say, as I go, I will care for them. As I go, I am willing to show up. And if we are faithful to show up in people's lives, God will be faithful to show his presence and power through us. When it comes to presence, ability is less crucial than availability. Lord, I pray that as we get ready to talk about what it means to show up over these next couple of weeks, you would use us in all of our weakness, in all of our ordinariness, to find the people who need to be welcomed. The ones that nobody else is making space for. And may you use us to remind them that they have value, that they have dignity, and they have worth, and their lives can be transformed through you. Help us to connect them to the real life you have to offer, not in any ways that's pushy or anything like that, but simply by making space for them to come and meet you, for them to be themselves, for them to know that at least one person cares. Lord, be with us as we try and do that for people over these next couple of months. No one should go through life alone. And we can do something about that. We pray these things in your name. Amen.